46 years ago, a young teacher named Emily Carter vanished from her small wooden house by Lake Aurelia, Ontario, disappeared without a trace, leaving her family and the entire town in shock. Authorities at the time believed she left voluntarily, but with no passport, no luggage, not even a note left behind. For decades, the case went cold, leaving only an anonymous typed letter with the words, "She's gone far away. Don't look anymore." However, over time, a young female investigator in Toronto didn't believe the old hypothesis and began retracing every small clue: the embroidered wool scarf, EC, an old roll of film, and DNA still lingering on the envelope's edge. What she discovered afterward would upend the entire history of the case and stun the entire Ontario community in a way no one could have imagined. Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. Aurelia, Ontario. Late October 1997, a small lakeside town on Lake Couching where you could walk from one end to the other in just 15 minutes. Where cold mist always lingered around the low wooden rooftops and church bells rang steadily every evening. The smell of damp pine and wood smoke mixed in the air. Yellow streetlights trembled in the fog, casting pale halos on the lake like streaks of memory. It was a seemingly ordinary Saturday evening, so quiet you could clearly hear a distant logging truck rumbling by. Emily Carter, a 4-year-old elementary school teacher, lived alone in a small house at the end of Cedar Street. Neighbors often saw her smiling every morning, hair neatly tied back, carrying a stack of students' tests. That evening, she left the house as dusk fell, wearing a burgundy wool sweater and carrying a small purse. No one knew where she was going. Only the old neighbor across the street recalled hearing the door close softly and the click of heels on the wooden porch, followed by silence. With the light still on inside, the kitchen radio played an old Linda Ronstadt song, her voice drifting endlessly in the empty room, mingling with the wind whistling through the door cracks. On the table, a teacup still held faint warmth. A textbook lay open halfway beside it, one page corner folded as if she'd returned to finish reading in just a few minutes. But the night stretched on, the Carter house light spilling onto the porch like an unblinking eye. When the church clock struck 10, Mrs. Carter, her mother, picked up the phone to call, hearing the rings echo into cold emptiness. No one answered. Half an hour later, Mr. Carter tried again, this time only a steady dial tone. In the neighborhood, a few curious neighbors stepped onto their porches, staring at the house with its light still on. One knocked on the door, no response. Wind from the lake brought mist blowing through, scattering dry maple leaves along the path. The night was eerily still. Only the gentle lap of waves on the shore and the door softly banging against the wall in the breeze. At dawn, as fog blanketed the streets and the sunrise hadn't yet peeked through the treine, a phone rang in the Aurelia Police Department's duty room. The duty officer answered, a trembling voice on the other end, speaking softly but firmly. "Our daughter didn't come home." In that moment, the fog thickened as if the whole town was holding its breath before something that had just begun. The next morning, as news of Emily Carter's disappearance spread, Aurelia awoke to a completely different atmosphere. Fog still blanketed the lake, but instead of the usual peace, people heard the crackle of police radios, boots crunching on wet gravel, and search dogs barking from the northern woods. Local police mobilized their full staff, coordinating with volunteer search teams from Barrie and Roar. A large map was spread across a long table in the Aurelia Police Department's makeshift meeting room, once the old firehouse storage shed. Lieutenant Martin Beck pointed at the map, drawing red circles around Lake Couching, Mississauga Road, and the northern woods, places Emily often walked on weekends. He spoke slowly, clearly. "We're not assuming anything. She could be lost. She could have had an accident. Or she could have been taken by someone." Friends, colleagues, neighbors were all mobilized. Police distributed Emily's portrait. Light brown hair, 5'5" tall, slim build, green eyes. People searched in groups of 4, combing both sides of the dirt roads leading to the town's edge. In their hands were photocopied flyers, edges wrinkled from humidity. At the end of Cedar Street, Emily's parents stood motionless, watching the group head into the woods, their eyes vacant. Neighbors carried flashlights, shovels, and even metal detectors, venturing deep into the dark forest where the stench of rotting leaves and cold earth rose thickly. In the first few hours, police received dozens of calls. A gas station attendant on Mississauga Road said he saw a girl like Emily around 9:00 p.m., buying a bottle of water and a pack of gum. Another, a freight truck driver, reported seeing a small silver car parked on the roadside, near the old bridge like her Corolla. But when investigators arrived, only tire tracks mixed in mud and fallen leaves remained. No trace solid enough to follow. Afternoon came quickly. The search expanded to the western lake shore where stone steps led down to the water. Wind blew hard, dry branches scraping like whispers. A young officer bent down to examine the damp ground and spotted faint footprints leading toward the forest edge. But last night's rain had blurred everything, impossible to confirm as Emily's or anyone else's. He took a cast, but back in the tech room, results showed only a faint, unanalyzable shape. Meanwhile, in downtown, the small cafe where Emily graded papers was packed. Everyone had a story about the last time they saw her. Some said they met her at the library last week. Others swore they saw her silhouette with a strange man in a dark coat near the bus stop. Police noted every statement, cross-checking every detail, but each story led in a different direction, contradicting the others. By day 2, Aurelia officially shifted from a peaceful town to a crime scene. Police set up barricades, strung yellow tape around suspect areas. Patrol cars circled the lake shore, red and blue lights reflecting on the cold water. Reporters from Toronto arrived, cameras panning over the small house at the end of Cedar Street, where Emily's family kept the porch light on all night. Townsfolk eyed each other strangely anxious, wary. In quiet grocery store chats, everyone lowered their voices when mentioning her name. On the third night, rescue divers searched part of the lake around the wooden bridge where people said they'd seen her pass. They pulled up small items, a handkerchief, a broken plastic shard, an old shoe, but nothing related to Emily. Each was laid on a table, numbered, photographed, then bagged as evidence. Lieutenant Beck stood by, gazing out the window where lake mist blurred like smoke, whispering to his assistant, "We're looking for a person or a trace in the fog." By midnight, efforts remained fruitless. Flashlights flickered through the woods. Radios crackled sporadically, then fell silent. An officer closed his notebook, sighed. She just melted into thin air. And so it was Aurelia, once quiet and slow, now choked by silence. No one said it, but everyone knew. Something worse than getting lost had happened. 4 days after Emily Carter vanished, hope in Aurelia turned to weary waiting. The police bulletin board map around Lake Couchiching was covered in red pins, each marking a spot where someone said they saw her, but most led to dead ends. That morning, a woman in Barrie, over 30 away, called the station. She said that last night, while fueling up at the Pro Canada near Highway 400, she saw a young woman very much like Emily, slim build, burgundy coat, standing next to a blonde man in a beige truck. She looked scared, the woman said. And when I looked over, he was gripping her hand tight. The call sent the entire investigative team rushing out. 2 police cars and a local patrol unit coordinated sweeping the gas station and surrounding area. But just hours later, they confirmed the woman was mistaken. The girl was a college student heading back to Toronto with her boyfriend. Every piece of evidence, every photo was unrelated. A spark of hope had flared and extinguished instantly. That afternoon, as the wrong person news was confirmed, the Carter family received a strange call. It came from a public line, a raspy, distorted male voice seemingly altered by a device. "Your daughter isn't missing. She went to Toronto. Don't look anymore." Then hung up. No time to ask anything. Mr. Carter sat stunned, clutching the receiver while Mrs. Carter burst into sobs. Police immediately traced the number originated from a payphone next to the Aurelia bus depot, just 2 blocks from Emily's house. When investigators arrived, the booth was empty. Only cigarette smoke and a wind-flipped newspaper remained. No clear fingerprints, no witnesses to anyone suspicious. Lieutenant Beck looked around, whispering to his team, "Someone wants us to believe she's alive and wants us to stop." News of the anonymous call rocked the town. Many began speculating Emily really left, that she wanted out of her small Aurelia life. Some colleagues said she'd seemed stressed lately, maybe hiding something. But closer friends, especially her classmate teacher Rachel Doyle, denied it. Rachel told police, last week she was talking about applying to teach art class extra. Emily had no reason to leave. When police searched the house, everything was intact. Clothes, wallet, gradebook, and even her car. But then one detail caught their eye. In the car maintenance log on the table, Emily had jotted a few short lines. In the car maintenance log on the table, Emily had jotted a few short lines. Take car to garage, Mark checked brakes. The date was 3 days before she vanished. That garage was just 4 blocks away, owned by Mark Holloway, a 30-something mechanic living alone. Records showed Mark was a longtime family friend of the Carters. He'd fixed Miss Carter's car and neighbors, too. Questioned, Mark said Emily brought the car in on Tuesday. He changed the oil and checked the brakes. Then she took it right back. Everything normal, nothing unusual, Mark said, voice low and firm. Lieutenant Beck noted his name on the list, but no specific reason to hold him. That evening, as the search team returned to the northern woods, they found fresh tire tracks mixed with old ones. A small truck had stopped there, possibly on the night she vanished. Tracks were faint, but the distinctive tread pattern caught investigators' attention. They cast soil samples sent to the tech lab, but the next night's rain destroyed any hope of matching. All that remained was patchy mud under flashlight beams. Aurelia now lived in 2 worlds. Daytime, people came and went at the cafe, trying to act normal. Nighttime, search groups quietly patrolled Misaga Road with flashlights and dogs. By the 3rd night of the new search, police expanded to the town's edge along the dirt road toward the lake. They searched all night, sweeping lights around every bend, every tree trunk, calling her name amid howling wind and waves crashing the shore. No response. Fog so thick headlights only pierced a few meters ahead. An officer looked up at Emily's house light glowing against the sky, whispering, "Maybe she's still out there somewhere. We just can't see her." At dawn, the search paused. Everyone silently packed gear, faces exhausted. Lieutenant Beck stared at the lake where morning light reflected like cold metal. "We're chasing shadows," he said. Voice hoarse. In that morning's report, the final typed line read, "No evidence found. No new traces. Victims still missing." 3 days after expanding the search to southern Aurelia, the first news that halted the entire team mid-wet forest came from Patrol Officer Lewis. He radioed back to base. Voice mixed with wind. "I think we found her Corolla." Within 15 minutes, all headlights pointed to a narrow path through marshy land off Highway 12. A seldom-used trail surrounded by shoulder-high pines and reeds. Emily's silver Toyota Corolla sat there parked crookedly. Right side wheels sunk slightly in mud. Headlights off, doors locked, but it had sat idle at least 2 nights. Morning dew coated the roof in a thin white film. And when the technician wiped it, he saw dust had resettled in a circular pattern, meaning someone touched the car shortly after it was abandoned. Lieutenant Beck approached, peering through the window. On the driver's seat lay Emily's light jacket, neatly folded as if she'd just set it down while driving. In the back, her purse, wallet ID, and a student notebook labeled Emily Carter, grade 3, everything intact, no signs of rummaging. In the trunk, a pencil box, unsent postcards, and a small bag of modeling clay Emily used for crafts. No keys, no signs of struggle, no blood or scratches on the body. But on the ground behind the tail, flashlight beams revealed something odd. Parallel tire tracks completely different from the Toyota's tires. "These are from a small truck," the forensic technician said, kneeling, measuring gaps between treads, not civilian type. Deeper treads, usually for delivery vehicles. He noted dimensions, photographed, then cast from the mud. Following the tracks, they stretched nearly 10 mm, then veered onto the main road, vanishing into gravel and dry leaves. No stopping signs, no skids, just parallel streaks as if that vehicle had parked right behind Emily's Corolla, then driven off very gently. Officers pried open the doors with tools, gloved hands searching every nook. On the gear shift, a clear fingerprint remained, but quick comparison confirmed it was Emily's. A faint perfume scent lingered in the cab, cool and mixed with old plastic. Lieutenant Beck stood by the car, eyes fixed on the dark tree line ahead. "If she left on her own," he said slowly, "why leave her wallet and jacket?" Forensics continued scanning the scene. A young officer spotted faint shoe prints on the roadside about 4 men from the car. Prints headed toward the woods, unclear if male or female, but larger than typical women's shoes. Beside them, a half-sem smoked De Maurier cigarette, a pricey brand, rare in town, all bagged in plastic. When word of the car spread to base, Mr. and Mrs. Carter arrived immediately. Mrs. Carter collapsed, seeing the familiar Corolla, trembling hand touching the cold glass. "It never went anywhere without telling us," she said through tears. Lieutenant Beck gently pulled her away, not wanting her to see too much. He signaled to wrap the scene. The car was towed to storage, the area sealed for further sweeps. By noon, Search teams expanded around the abandonment site. They combed the forest edge. Dogs tracking scent. One dog halted, barking toward the wetter western fringe. There they found tiny fabric fibers snagged on low bushes, color matching Emily's sweater from the night she vanished. But later tests showed just common wool jacket fibers. Another lead evaporated. Late afternoon rain began, making trace collection harder. Lieutenant Beck sat in the patrol car, staring through fogged windshield. He felt something off about the case. From the anonymous call to the neatly abandoned car, it all seemed staged. He noted in his log, no signs of hasty departure. No signs of attack possible. Another person drove it here. That night at headquarters, scene photos spread across the table. Truck tire tracks enlarged. Tech compared to database results matched mid-72 seconds. Ford F-100 tires common for mechanics and garages. It reminded Beck of the name in Emily's log. Mark checked brakes. He said nothing, just underlined it and closed the file. Outside rain pounded the tin roof under cold neon lights. Beck stared at the photo of the abandoned car. Flashlight beam on wet body reflecting like a wide-open eye. She didn't disappear on her own, he whispered almost to himself. Someone helped her disappear. The next morning, the Aurelia Times ran a big headline. Missing teacher's car found no trace of owner. Below it was a photo of the scene. Fog blanketing the dirt road, yellow tape peeking through the maple woods. That small town, once peaceful, had now become a maze of unanswered questions. In the days after Emily Carter's Corolla was found, the Aurelia Police Department shifted its entire focus from search to investigation. The map thick with red pins was replaced by a list of names, all those said to have seen or spoken to Emily in the 48 hours before she vanished. Lieutenant Martin Beck, after nearly 3 decades on the job, knew a case like this only began when people sat down face to face with every tiniest detail. He and his subordinate, Officer Lewis, split the list. The first was Rachel Doyle, Emily's colleague and closest friend at Couching Heights Elementary. Rachel sat in the small interrogation room holding a cold coffee cup, voice trembling slightly. Friday afternoon we were still talking in the teacher's lounge, she recounted. Emily said she'd head home early to tidy the classroom over the weekend. She mentioned maybe stopping at the grocery store on the way. Beck asked if she'd seemed worried or unusual. Rachel shook her head. Not at all. She said she wanted to write a letter to her mom, even joked about baking pumpkin pie over the weekend. She looked totally normal. The second was Mrs. Evelyn Moore, the neighbor across the street. Mrs. Moore, over 60, silver-haired, sharp-eyed. She said that evening around 7 she saw lights on in Emily's house and heard the radio drifting out. I remember clearly because I just fed the cat, she said. I caught a glimpse of her passing the window. Seemed like she was wearing a red coat or burgundy something. Beck asked if she saw anyone with her. She answered firmly. No, just her. Then the house went dark, then lit up again around 9. I thought she was back. Turns out not. The third, the owner of Duncan's Grocery, a skinny old man, eyes squinted from years of glasses. He confirmed that around 6:30 p.m., Emily stopped by for milk, sugar, and a spool of sewing thread. He remembered because she paid with a $5 bill and left loose change on the counter. She was very polite. No one with her. Everything completely normal, he said. Asked about other customers then. He only recalled a man in a leather jacket buying cigarettes and leaving about 2 minutes before Emily. He didn't remember the face, just a slightly raspy voice and the smell of motor oil. Police noted that detail. Smell of motor oil. They thought of Mark Holloway, the garage owner near Emily's house. Mark was the only one without a clear alibi for the night she vanished. That day, when summoned for a statement, he arrived with an eerily calm demeanor. His work overalls still flecked with black grease. Beck asked, "Did you see Emily Carter on Friday evening?" Mark looked straight, answered curtly. "No, I didn't see her that day." No blink, no hesitation, his voice even as a machine. Beck waited, hoping for more. But Mark just crossed his arms, eyes indifferent. "Did she come to your garage any time before that?" Beck pressed. "Yes, Tuesday. I changed the oil, checked the brakes, all done. She took the car right back, thanked me, and left. Haven't seen her since." Beck asked further, "Did you know if she was seeing anyone or going out with anyone lately?" Mark shrugged. "No, I don't pry into customers' business." He ended the questioning with, "If I knew anything, I'd say so. But really, she wasn't anyone special enough for somebody to want to hurt her." After Mark left, Beck sat pensively staring at his notes. No clear reason to suspect, just a hunch. He was the last one with specific contact with Emily, and Mark's near-cold composure bothered Beck. He wrote briefly in the file, "No evidence, no motive, but note for follow-up." In the following days, investigators continued screening a few others. The cafe waitress, the mail carrier, a student who said they saw the teacher on the street Friday afternoon, but each statement opened a possibility, then closed it right away. Witnesses differed on times, on clothing, even on car colors. Nothing matched. By December, the first snow began blanketing Aurelia White. On Beck's desk, the missing Emily Carter file had grown to nearly 200 pages. Physical evidence, truck tire tracks, cigarette butt, shoe prints all led nowhere conclusive. Tire tracks matched hundreds of trucks across Ontario. The cigarette butt had no DNA. Shoe prints lacked comparison samples. Forensics concluded no direct physical evidence. Lieutenant Beck sat in his office, gazing out the snow-covered window, half-some smoked cigarette in hand. Every lead had gone colder than the approaching winter. He knew in just a few more weeks this would be shelved as pending, awaiting new info, then sink into oblivion like hundreds of others. But what gnawed at him wasn't the lack of evidence, but the feeling someone was watching the investigation, silently, almost deliberately. Because every time they asked about Emily, it seemed someone already knew they were coming. Before Christmas 1977, the Aurelia Times ran its final story on the disappearance. Small headline buried on page 3, "No trace of young teacher still missing. Police continue investigation." Below it, an old photo of Emily in the classroom, gentle smile holding a box of white chalk. In the photo's corner, a detail few noticed. The window curtain behind reflected the silhouette of a man standing in the schoolyard dark coat. In January the next year, the file was officially suspended. Beck wrote the final line in the log. No evidence, no motive, no progress. Then he closed the folder, placed it on the shelf among dozens of others all labeled the same. Cold case, March 1st to 978. Winter and Aurelia refused to retreat. Snow still lay thick on rooftops, streets empty except for distant snowplow rumbles. The Carter family lived more quietly than ever. Their house, where Emily used to visit every weekend, now looked abandoned. Windows always curtained. Porch light on every evening like a small ritual for hope. Nearly half a year had passed since she vanished. No calls, no traces. All searches stopped. The town returned to daily rhythm. Only that small house still holding an unfillable void. On the morning of March 14th, as Mr. Carter brought in the mail from the box, he saw a strange envelope. No return address, no stamp, just one neatly typed line for Mr. Robert Carter. Black ink typed on an old machine. A few letters slightly smudged on the right edge as if the type bar was misaligned. He opened it. Inside, a single folded sheet typed on the same machine. Just one line. "She's gone far away. Don't look anymore." No signature, no punctuation. The line centered on the page as if the writer deliberately left white space around it to let the words echo alone. Mr. Carter read it over and over, feeling his blood freeze. Mrs. Carter rushed over, snatched the paper, eyes bulging. "Who sent this? What do they know about our daughter?" she said, voice breaking. Police were called immediately. Lieutenant Beck arrived within 30 minutes, old file in hand. He gloved up, carefully placed the letter on the table, examined every detail. "Canada bond paper," he said quietly. "Common for accounting and admin offices, but good quality. Not easy to find around here?" He sniffed lightly, detecting heavy ink smell. Oil-based ink for 1/970 seconds. Remington typewriters, not the cheap fluid type common in homes. That caught Beck's attention. An ordinary person would hand-write a letter, not use an office typewriter. He ordered the envelope sealed and sent straight to the Ontario Provincial Police OP Forensics Lab in Toronto. Testing revealed a very faint thumbprint on the paper edge, but too faint for a print lift. No DNA, no hair fibers, no postmark. Every trace avenue blocked, only one certainty. Someone personally dropped the letter in the Carter's mailbox. Lieutenant Beck returned to the scene, checked the surroundings. Snow so deep, no footprints remained. "They came at night," he told Officer Lewis, "and knew exactly where this house is." Beck noted the envelope cut very evenly, not torn, but sliced with a knife. A careful, almost cold gesture. It reminded him of someone working in a technical environment accustomed to machine precision. The letter was kept as evidence. Press got wind. Aurelia buzzed again. Aurelia Times ran a big headline. "Mystery letter. She's gone far away. Emily Carter disappearance reignites." The whole town debated. Some said it was a cruel prank. Others insisted Emily really left and the sender just wanted the family to accept it. But Beck didn't believe in coincidence. He recalled the De Maurier cigarette butt at the scene, a rare brand common among long-shift mechanics and shops. He began screening the list of Remington typewriter owners in Aurelia and surroundings. The list wasn't long, mostly law offices, schools, small shops. One name stopped Beck cold. Holloway Auto Repair, the only garage in the area with a small office and an old Remington typewriter for customer invoices. Owner Mark Holloway. Beck met Mark a second time, but this time he was more guarded. When Beck casually asked, "Do you use a typewriter in the garage?" Mark answered quickly, almost rehearsed. "Yes, but it's broken. I ditched it in January." Beck stayed silent, looking over Mark's shoulder. In the office corner, amid cluttered papers, sat the Remington Model 12 under a thin dust layer, still plugged in. He said nothing, just nodded and left. On the way back, Beck noted in his log, "Remington typewriter needs further verification. Possible direct link to 3/1978 letter." But without a search warrant, he couldn't do more. When he sent ink from the letter for comparison to Holloway's sample, forensics returned inconclusive common ink type, no unique markers. Beck knew he'd touched something, but not enough evidence to hold. In April that year, the case officially moved to cold file status. The letter became the only valuable evidence left. It was placed in a plastic envelope sealed, stored in a metal filing cabinet. Years later, Beck still remembered that paper clearly. The lines centered short, cold, like a death sentence. As for the Carter family, from the day they received the letter, they never mentioned searching again. Mrs. Carter hung her daughter's photo on the wall next to hand-embroidered words. "Faith is the only map in the dark." Every evening she still turned on the porch light but no longer looked out. Aurelia sank into silence, and in police files the Emily Carter case gained one note. March 1978 anonymous letter received possible contact. From then on, for many years, no one mentioned her again, but that letter, the thin, cold, nameless sheet, lay quietly in the file drawer waiting for someone patient enough to open it once more. After the anonymous letter appeared, everything gradually slipped out of control. Aurelia police, though keeping the case in files, faced public pressure and lack of evidence that shifted the investigation. They began leaning toward the hypothesis that Emily Carter left voluntarily. In 1978, press started writing differently. No longer missing teacher, but teacher may have left Aurelia for new life. From victim, Emily became a romantic mystery everyone interpreted their own way. Police received scattered tips from the Toronto area, saying someone saw a woman like Emily Carter working at a cafe or used bookstore. Each tip redirected the investigation in 1979. They sent 2 detectives to Toronto, searched 2 weeks, interviewed over 10 similar-looking women. All wrong. Each return thickened the file with meaningless pages. Lieutenant Beck, nearing retirement then, still harbored doubts. He knew Emily wasn't the type to leave. She had family, job, friends, a simple, uneventful life. But the truth in investigation is no evidence, and belief is just hunch. By 1980, the case was handed to Inspector Roy Atkins, a practical man who trusted numbers over intuition. He reviewed the entire file, read the anonymous letter, then declared in a meeting, "No crime signs, no violence evidence, possible voluntary departure." That one statement shifted the whole investigation. Beck objected, but a retiring man's voice carried no weight. "Mr. Carter says his daughter would never do that," Beck said. "But who really knows what people think?" Atkins replied coldly. "We don't investigate what the dead might think. We investigate what's left, and here nothing's left." The next 5 years, 1980 to 1985, the Emily Carter file gradually slid off desks. New detectives cycled through, each spending weeks glancing, then moving on. Each anniversary of her disappearance, Mr. and Mrs. Carter sent letters to the station asking for new leads. Answers always the same. "We're still following tips, but really no one was." Everyone believed Emily had gone far away. Town rumors took root too. Some said she left with a secret lover, a music teacher from her old school. Others even rumored she was living in the U.S., changed name, had kids. One persistent story claimed Emily fell for a married man, and when discovered, she vanished to avoid scandal. No one knew the source, but it spread fast and scarier people started believing. In Aurelia, memory of the gentle teacher faded, replaced by an image of a woman who ran off for love. The Aurelia Times in 1982 even ran a half-joking article. If Emily Carter is alive, hope she knows the town still remembers her and wants to hear that secret love story. Reading those lines, Mr. Carter tore the paper silently. Mrs. Carter cried but said nothing. The aging couple became shadows in a house full of daughters' photos. They still wrote regularly to provincial police, enclosing copies of the anonymous letter, hoping someone would look again. In 1983, Lieutenant Beck officially retired. Before handover, he visited the Carters one last time. He said quietly, "I never believe she left on her own, but without evidence, they'll say otherwise." He gave them the only copy of the letter, just so they'd have something of their daughter. "If anyone reopens this, tell them to read the letter closely," he said. "Not the content, but how it's written." Then he left, never returning to the station. By 1985, after all investigative paths dead-ended, the file was officially transferred to OP Cold Case Division, the Ontario Provincial Police Unit storing stalled cases. It was an old building on Toronto's outskirts where thousands of files sat in tiered iron cabinets, each labeled, numbered, dust-covered. Emily's went in the female, missing nonviolent indicators drawer, a cold classification label reflecting nothing but the arrow's assumptions. When the file was archived, a young detective added the final line on the cover. "Carter Emily, last sighting October 1, 1977, presumed voluntary disappearance." Those 5 words enough to erase 10 years of her parents' belief that their daughter was harmed. And in Orillia, the house at the end of Cedar Street gradually decayed. Mrs. Carter still turned on the porch light every evening. That winter, snow fell so thick the light was just a faint yellow glow peeking through the blizzard. Many said she was crazy, but anyone who'd lost a child understood. It was the only way to feel she was still out there somewhere, just not found the way home yet. The Emily Carter case officially went cold at the end of 1985. No one asked anymore. No one wrote anymore. The wooden house still stood there silently overlooking Lake Cucci, the water like a foggy mirror reflecting a mistake that spanned generations. They had believed the easiest thing instead of the truth. 45 years after Emily Carter vanished, her files still lay dormant in an iron cabinet in the basement of the Ontario Provincial Police Cold Case Storage Centre, where fluorescent lights cast down on endless rows of metal filing aisles. In February 2022, winter winds swept through Toronto, carrying chill from Lake Ontario. But in the small third-floor office, Detective Ava Nguyen sat diligently reading through old case files. She was one of the youngest investigators in the cold case unit, just 32, but with a special talent for spotting overlooked details. On her computer screen, a list of over 100 unsolved missing persons cases from the 1,170 seconds appeared. Ava scrolled through each name until stopping at Carter Emily, missing 1977 Orillia, Ontario. She opened the electronic file and was immediately drawn into the story. An elementary school teacher vanished without a trace, her car neatly abandoned by the roadside. An anonymous letter saying, "Don't look anymore." The more she read, the stranger it seemed. No physical evidence had been analyzed to modern standards. All tests stopped at 1978 technology. She printed the entire file, sat at the table, flipping through yellowed pages. Amid the reports typed in stiff courier font, she found a plastic-bagged envelope clipped in the March 1978 anonymous letter. The typeline, "She's gone far away. Don't look anymore." Still clear, but the paper edges discolored. Ava gloved up, used a magnifying glass to examine closely. On the envelope-sealed flap, she spotted a darker, uneven layer of glue, possible remnant epithelial cells from saliva. She opened the 1978 forensics log. Seeing the brief note, "No clear fingerprints detected, no biological testing performed," Ava sat silent for a long time. She wondered, why didn't anyone check for DNA? Then remembered in 1978 the concept wasn't applied yet. A thought flashed. If the letter was preserved well enough, even a tiny DNA sample could still exist. The next day, Ava took the envelope to the Ontario Forensic Institute in Scarborough. In the cold, brightly lit lab, she met Dr. Elliot Fraser, expert in next-generation DNA sequencing technology method, allowing full genome reconstruction from just a few cells. Ava placed the plastic bag on the stainless table, speaking slowly. 1978 document intact seal. "I want reanalysis with the latest generation." Fraser glanced over, eyebrow raised. 40 years sample may have degraded, Ava replied. "If there's a 1% chance, I want to try." Fraser nodded. "We'll sample non-invasively. If skin cells or saliva remain on the glue, New tech can amplify it. She signed the evidence handover log. And the letter, the sole evidence in the Emily Carter case, was moved to a sterile examination chamber sealed in a 20°C gas cabinet. 3 weeks later, Ava got the call. "When you should come right away," Fraser said, his voice tinged with excitement. When she arrived, he pointed to the computer screen. Genetic graph showing 2 distinct sequences. "We found DNA from 2 individuals," he said. "One female matches victim profile, possibly cells from the original letter or later handling, but the other is male. No match to any COS or National Database criminal records." Ava leaned in, eyes on the blinking gene codes. "Can you run genetic genealogy?" she asked. Fraser nodded. "We've uploaded to the Forensic Genetic Genealogy database. It's analyzing distant relatives based on DNA sequence." He looked at her. "If lucky, we'll find 3rd or 4th dairy relatives of the sender." A week later, results arrived. The printed report was 3 pages thick, headlined "Partial Match Detected." Holloway lineage. Ava read slowly, word by word. The Holloways. She dug back into the old file. That name appeared multiple times. Mark Holloway, garage owner near Emily's home last to service her car, who said, "I didn't see her that day." A thin thread had just connected 2 eras of investigation after 45 years. Ava leaned back in her chair, eyes fixed on the paper. She felt like hearing something echo from the old file cabinets, the voices of those who failed, the generation that missed this clue due to lacking tech. In her mind rang Lieutenant Beck's final 1085 log entry. No evidence, no motive, no progress. Now that very paper had betrayed that conclusion. That evening, back in her small East York apartment, Ava opened the file on her laptop, gazing at Emily Carter's black and white photo. The young teacher smiling before the blackboard, eyes bright, brown hair neatly tied. Below the photo, Beck's handwritten note. She didn't leave. Ava whispered to herself, "You were right." The next morning, she presented the report to the unit chief. "I want to reopen the Emily Carter case," Ava said. "Unidentified DNA trace, genetic link to Holloway family. I believe the letter center knows what happened." The Chief Inspector Grant looked at her long, then nodded. "Fine, you have 3 months, but remember this buried 40 years. Make sure you're not just waking a ghost," Ava replied calmly. "I'm not afraid of ghosts. I'm afraid of silence." And so after nearly half a century gathering dust, the Carter-Emily missing 1977 file was officially reopened. In the cold case unit's cold, quiet building, a green status light blinked on file cabinet 4472. Inside the anonymous letter, once seemingly meaningless evidence, had begun to speak. The Ontario Forensic Institute's examination room was always quiet. But that morning, the air thickened. On the large wall-mounted screen, 2 parallel DNA sequences displayed clearly, one blue-coated strand, one red. Dr. Elliot Fraser stood, hands clasped behind his back beside Ava, speaking softly as if afraid to break the surrounding silence. "This is the confirmation. First sample, female, perfect match to genome extracted from victim's hairbrush in 1977. Possessions. No doubt that's Emily Carter." He paused, gaze heavy. "Second sample, male. And here's the interesting or most telling part." Ava held her breath, eyes glued to the blinking gene segments. "Did you find any CODIS or National Database match?" she asked. Fraser shook his head. "No, this person never arrested, never profiled, no criminal record, no trace in any system." He clicked the mouse, zooming the genealogical analysis area. "But I ran it through international genetic genealogy databases, GenMatch, GEDTree, and Ancestry DNA. System flagged a 3rd-degree connection to Holloway lineage in Simcoe County. Genetic match rate 12, 8%. Enough to confirm close relative, possibly first cousin or direct bloodline." That name Holloway made the room colder. Ava froze. She'd seen it dozens of times in the old file. Mark Holloway, garage owner where Emily serviced her car. The man who lied with too calm composure to be unsuspected. "Are you certain of the results?" Ava asked. Fraser nodded, placing the printed report on the steel table. 98% certain. If there's an error, it's God's." Ava took the print out, eyes scanning the dry technical lines. Specimen B male DNA Y-star match with Holloway familial cluster genetic distance. 3-7 source adhesive surface back flap, meaning the sender's DNA stuck to the envelope glue, possibly saliva, possibly hand sweat, and that person shared blood with the Holloways she left. The lab carrying the file like a heavy stone in the hallway solved. DNA case photos hung evenly on walls, a young face, a victim, a convicted perpetrator, each a closure. But she knew this one was just opening. That evening, Ava returned to the Toronto Cold Case Unit office. She turned on the light, room stark white against the night. On the table, the original paper file, Lieutenant Beck's male naval Swissant Desset Notes photocopy. She flipped to the last page. Bold black ink handwriting. Mark Holloway, no alibi, after 6:30 p.m. claimed not to see victim. In the margin, Beck's question mark. Ava touched the smudge ink, feeling the long dead man's breath. She began reviewing everything on Mark. Per police records, in 1977 he was 32, owner of a small garage on Forest Hill Road, less than a mile from Emily's. No priors, no record. Wife died early in a 1975 motorcycle accident. No children. Back then, police found no reason to suspect, just a quiet man, reclusive, working days amid oil and metal smells. After the Emily Carter case went cold, Mark sold the garage, moved to Barrie in 1982, still lived there. Ava opened her laptop, searched civil records. Mark Holloway, now 77 in a small Barrie suburb home, still registered for personal business license as mobile mechanic service. Unmarried, no kids, sole surviving Simcoe County relative. Distant cousin Samuel Granger arrested for assault in 1980, then vanished without address. Ava noted both names. The next day, she met Inspector Grant to present results. In the small conference room, she spread the file on the table, detail by detail. DNA report, family tree 1977, old file. Anonymous letter has 2 DNA samples. Female victim, male sender, male sample blood linked to Holloway family, specifically Aurelia Barrie cluster. Grant leaned back, pensive. You think it's Mark? Ava shook her head. Can't confirm. Could be him. Could be relative. But definitely the sender knew exactly what happened to Emily Carter. No one else had reason to write. She's gone far away. Don't look anymore. Grant silent long, then asked, You know how many investigators this beat? Ava replied, I know, but this time I have what they didn't. She held up the DNA results, light reflecting off the paper. A name, even if genetic. That afternoon, Ava drove to Aurelia. March sky, overcast gray fog blanketing Lake Couching like a giant morning veil. She stopped before the old Carter house, now boarded up, yard overgrown. For sale sign crooked, near broken. Porch still had the small light fixture long off, but cord plugged in. Ava stood long imagining. The old father opening the envelope, reading that cold line. She whispered as if to Emily herself, We won't stop that. Evening, she stopped at a small downtown cafe. The elderly owner, hearing Emily Carter's name, just sighed softly. That teacher people said she left, but I never believed. Ava asked, Know any Holloway who lived here? She replied, Oh, Mark Holloway fixed cars for the whole town. Quiet, didn't talk much. When she vanished, I remember he went to the Carter often. Said he'd helped search, brought flyers. Strange, after that, he disappeared. Sometime in 1982, sold the garage, gone who knows where. That account chilled Ava's spine. The self-proclaimed search helper had DNA on the Don't Look Anymore letter. She returned to the hotel, spread file on the bed, wrote short in notebook. If letter sender's Hollow, he didn't just know he wanted to end the search. 3 days later, expanded genealogical trace results arrived. YSTR gene structure showed male DNA likely from second branch of Holloway family, specifically son of Mark's brother Daniel Holloway, dead since 1999. But Daniel had no recorded legitimate sons. Only possibility illegitimate child or close blood relative. Ava added letter writer, possibly Mark or close Holloway relative. But indirect DNA evidence forces Holloway back to investigation center. As she left the room, cold rain poured outside. On the car window, water droplets ran long like ink smudges, exactly like the 1978 letter smears. And in that moment, Ava knew the Emily Carter case was no longer an old file. It had come alive and was watching her every step. April 2022, as the last snow melted on Aurelia's dirt roads, Detective Ava Nguyen and the OP forensics team returned to where Emily Carter's Toyota Corolla was found 45 years before. Landscape changed, but the familiar curve of the slope, black pines leaning over the forest edge and gravel mixed ground, still held the same chill as the 1977 black and white photo she'd stared at hundreds of times. Investigation vehicles parked along the trail. Team in white coveralls, gloved, prepped ground, penetrating radar and metal detectors. Ava stood silent a moment, breathed deep, then whispered to herself, "If he was really here, something still left." She pointed to the ground where the Corolla once sat crooked, right wheels sunk in mud. In 1977, the area was superficially swept. Now with new tech, everything could retell its story. Forensic technician Julia Merrick powered on the radar, a compact device emitting sound waves deep into the soil below. On the handheld screen, gentle curving colored lines appeared representing disturbed soil layers. "There's an anomaly here," Julia said, pointing to a crescent-shaped bright streak about 15 centimeters below the surface. Ava crouched down, lightly digging with a small trowel. The soil there was different, harder and grayer as if once compacted. When they scooped up a handful, sunlight revealed a small mud-caked metal object glinting, a paint chip pale beige. Ava squinted, carefully picking it up with tweezers, placing it in an evidence bag. "Not from the Toyota Corolla," she said immediately. Emily's car was silver. "This is beige with a golden sheen." Julia nodded. "Right. And this paint layer is thicker industrial type." They continued digging around the area, finding a few other fragments, small, bent as if chipped off from a light impact against something hard. Once everything was collected, Ava drove back to Toronto that night. In the lab, she requested comparison of this paint sample against the National Canadian Vehicle Paint Database. 3 days later, the technician sent a brief email. Match results. Desert beige metallic paint sample, Ford F100 pickup line 1976, 1977 production year. Match percentage 99.4%. Ava sat motionless before the screen. Ford F100, the exact small truck type forensics in 1977, suspected from tire tracks beside the Corolla. Back then they couldn't specify due to lack of data, but now the picture was piecing together. She reopened Mark Holloway's old file. The vehicle registration section showed vehicle Ford 500-year color desert beige. The truck registered under his name in August 1976 at the Forest Hill garage address. Ava leaned back slightly, hands clasped. "We have paint, vehicle line, and matching address," she said to herself. But like every good investigator, she knew matches don't mean guilt. Needed more physical evidence, something undeniable. The next day, she and Julia returned to the scene to continue sweeping the surrounding area. Lake wind carried chill, radar humming steadily. This time they moved toward the forest edge, about 10 men from the car spot, where the ground dipped lower. Julia stopped frowning. "Metal signal here." She staked a marker, then scanned thoroughly with the magnetometer. Strong signal. As they dug down, a faint clink sounded, the trowel tip hitting something hard. They peeled away soil layers, revealing a large rusty screw, head still flecked with beige paint. This screw type was commonly used to secure truck bed guards. Ava looked at Julia. "Ford F100 uses these two," Julia replied, voice low. "And if the screw fell here means that truck stopped longer than we thought." They continued collecting soil samples around logging coordinates, photographing the entire area. This time Ava noticed something small but key. On a nearby tree trunk, a deep scratch weathered by time but still a perfect circle, like a bumper rub mark. She measured it, noting in her log. Scratch height 90 cm, matches Ford F100 rear bumper height. Back home, she compiled all images, reconstructing the scene in 3D simulation software. On screen, 2 vehicles appeared. Emily's silver Toyota Corolla parked crookedly roadside. Behind it, a beige Ford F100 parked tight. With them that close, just opening the passenger door, someone from the truck could reach the small car in seconds. "No violence needed," Ava said. Just a knock on the window, a familiar voice. She imagined the scene of the 22nd of October, 1977 night. Thick fog, empty dirt road, Emily pulling over, maybe hearing a call or seeing someone known. A small truck approaching from behind. Headlights off, parking tight curbside, and in a moment everything vanished. Ava sent all data to Toronto's Criminal Analysis Center, requesting trace on whether Mark's Ford F100 still had insurance or inspection records in the system. Next day, results returned. Vehicle declared sold for scrap in 1983. No buyer recorded. "Convenient," Ava said. Riley, a perfect truck to disappear. She drove to Barrie to Mark Holloway's house. The small home sat on the edge of an old neighborhood, weathered wood walls, backyard full of old mechanic junk. As Ava pulled up, Mark knelt beside a newer pickup, wiping hands on a rag. He looked at her, eyes cold, unsurprised. "Police again," he said, voice raspy. "How many years and still not forgotten?" Ava approached, flashing her badge. "I'm Detective Newen, Cold Case Unit. I'm reviewing Emily Carter's disappearance." Mark smiled faintly, smirking. "That name again? I don't know her." Ava scanned the yard, spotting an old metal frame leaning against the wall, paint flaking and patches still the old beige. You drove a Ford F-100, right? Mark looked up, eyes flashing briefly, then indifferent again. I've driven dozens of trucks. Police going to search if I kept it 40 years. Ava didn't reply. She knew she lacked evidence to charge, but she noticed his hand tremble slightly, lighting a cigarette. His thumb showed a small arc-shaped scar. Exact spot where one might nick sealing an envelope with a knife. She noted it mentally, said nothing more. As she returned to her car, sunset gilded the old road where nearly half a century ago, a woman vanished without trace. Now under frozen soil, paint chips had told the story's beginning, and Ava knew this was just the first step in a deep dig, not just underground but into a town's cold, forgotten memory. 3 days after returning to Aurelia, Ava began tracking down 1,177 search participants, now elderly, silver-haired, but still holding memories of that foggy night by Lake Couchiching. She wanted to hear from them. Not mechanical statements or logs, but real recollections. Things not in the files. First was Harold Baines, 27, then first search volunteer, now 72, in a small Midland nursing home. Harold remembered vividly seeing Mechanic Holloway in the woods. He recounted in raspy voice, frail hands trembling on teacup. We split into groups heading different directions. Mark volunteered, said he knew terrain from fishing around the lake. At first he was eager, map flashlight leading the group. But near the dirt road where Carter's car was found, he suddenly said we should veer left into northern woods while police ordered along the lakeshore. We followed thinking he knew better, but soon he said he had to go back to the car for more batteries, then vanished. When the group returned, no one saw him. I thought he got lost. Ava asked, Did you report that to police then? Harold nodded. Yes, but they said maybe he was tired and went home. They didn't think a helper could be the problem. She noted every word carefully. In her mind, Pye's sharpened mark wasn't just present in the search. He directed it, the one who led the whole group away from the real search area. Second witness, Betty Lorne, Carter family neighbor who cooked for search teams. When Ava arrived, she was planting flowers on the porch. Wrinkled face but bright eyes. Mentioning Emily, she paused long, then said, After she vanished, Mark Holloway came constantly. Every few days he'd visit the Carters, bring pie, say he wouldn't give up. Felt guilty for not finding anything. Mr. Carter believed, even said Mark was the only one who didn't forget Emily. But I saw something off each visit. He always asked the same. Had police checked the lake thoroughly, and had anyone searched his garage? Mr. Carter thought concern. I saw him probing how far they'd gotten. Ava asked. How long after did he keep coming? Betty replied. About half a year. Stopped right when that letter arrived. Week before the letter, I saw him at Carter's evening talking on the porch. Lights off. After that night, he never returned. Ava went silent. A eager searcher vanished exactly when the letter appeared. In her mind, Dr. Fraser's voice rang metallic cold. Envelope flap DNA linked to Holloway bloodline. She met 3rd George Randall, young officer then in search team, now retired in Collingwood. Hearing Ava's intro, he stared long, said, I've waited for someone to revisit this. 45 years. He opened a drawer, pulled a yellowed photo search group. Center tall man in dark coat, flashlight in hand. Mark Holloway. Look, George said. He always wanted center frame. That night, I remember clearly he was the only one who knew the car's location before police announced publicly. Ava frowned. How'd he know? George shrugged. No one knows. When we got radio info, Mark was already there. Said he heard rumors, but checks showed no one. But police knew the spot. I told Lieutenant Beck. He said he'd look into it, but the case went cold too fast. Ava's heart pounded. 3 witnesses, 3 stories, same pattern. The dedicated volunteer always at key times and places. She opened her notebook, wrote short. Most eager searcher knows exactly where to avoid. That afternoon, she visited Aurelia Public Library, storing 1,972 local papers. In archives, Ava found a 1977 photo of search group at Lake Couchiching. Bottom left, Mark Hollow, head down. Map in hand, seeming to speak to Lieutenant Beck on his coat. Clear mud streaks on right sleeve and arm, exact spot where 1,977. File noted beige paint flecks in soil. Ava. Zoomed eyes fixed faint geometric mark nearly. Paint streak ran down the sleeve. Huriel's car, she whispered that evening in her Lakeview hotel room. Ava sat before laptop, reopening full digital file. Timeline stretched. 8 Simon. Mark joined search, misdirects 1978, letter sent. Holloway blood DNA, 2022. Paint matches Mark's Ford F100. Each line connected like red thread through time. She felt in silence, Emily watching. Next day, Ava returned to Toronto, presented to Inspector Grant. On conference table, she spread new statements, recordings of Harold, Betty, George, zoomed, Mark, mud, coat photo, paint match results. We're on target, she said firmly. Mark Holloway wasn't just involved. He interfered from start, derailing the search. And the 1978 letter wasn't a warning, but a message from the perpetrator. Grant pondered, fingers tapping lightly. What next? Ava replied, research Holloway's old garage. If he staged the scene, something's still buried. Grant stared long, then nodded. You have 72 hours for warrant and start, but careful. Moine survivors after 40 years fear nothing except truth. Leaving, Ava stood at glass door watching. Toronto rain on glass, her reflection with notebook line, she just added. Best hiders are those once under searchlights. She closed the notebook, breathed deep. Next time they'd find not just clues, they'd find what Mark Holloway always hid back in Toronto. Ava spent nights in cold case unit office desk, lamp on thick files and DNA data screen after Grant meeting. She expanded genealogy analysis, not just Mark Holloway, but all genetically linked to male DNA on 19978 envelope. She contacted Ontario Forensic Genetic Genealogy Center, combining public genetic data with civil records. Young tech Emily Shao opened Family Tree Builder on server. Loaded specimen B. Male 1978 letter sequence. Thousands of connections, spiderwebbed dots for distant relatives, complex lines across southern Ontario. Here's Holloway cluster, Emily said, pointing high match genes. From initial analysis, DNA likely side branch third or fourth dairy relative of Mark Holloway. I'll run expanded through marriage and blood ties. She typed fast. Lines lit. Name appeared at diagram age. Samuel Granger? Ava leaned in. Granger. Emily nodded. Same great-grandfather as Mark Holloway. Paternal brother line lived same Aurelia neighborhood 1,972 seconds. Found his driver's license address on Forest Hill Road, just 2 houses from Mark's garage. Ava's heart tightened. So in 1977 they lived same area. Blood relatives, both single adult men. Exactly, Emily replied. And one more thing, she opened another window. Old police file copy. Samuel Granger, suspected in 1980 Barrie woman assault victim, survived but couldn't ID perp due to masked face. Granger left Ontario after whereabouts unknown. File notes missing, divided by untraceable since 1981. Ava, silent, long room only, fan hum, then softly. If he vanished just 3 years after Emily Carter? And if letter DNA, relative to both likely disappearance? Wasn't one man, she requested 1,080. Assault original file from Barrie Police. When arrived, she opened first page. Victim Linda Pierce, 22, attacked walking home less than a mile from Samuel Greer's work, and suspect description detail chilled Ava. Suspect has small R-shaped scar on right thumb. Ava immediately opened photo of Mark she took weeks ago at his house. In shot, Mark lighting cigarette, clear round scar on right thumb on her afternoon Sunday. She recalled seeing its small detail unexplained. Then now late confirmation these two men may have shared a secret, an act, a crime. That evening, Ava pinned family tree on wall, tacked Mark and Samuel photos side by side. Between she drew red line marked same blood, same time. Same place below marker note, not 1 but 2. She called Dr. Ferrassier. At forensics need verification, possible letter DNA from Mark's close relative, not him. Fraser replied, yes, why stir? Sequence near match, not exact, if first cousin or half-brother. Still 99% match, Ava asked. If not Mark writing letter, could it be Samuel Granger? Fraser pondered, entirely possible if they lived near each other. 1977 shared environment. Equipment like typewriter, letter writer could be Samuel. Ava hung up, hard pounding. If Samuel wrote letter, he was still in Aurelia 1978 after Emily vanished and likely knew Mark. Perhaps not just relatives, accomplices. Next day, Ava drove back to Aurelia to old civil registry office. She dug archives and in 1977 address file page truly, Granger Samuel, renting at 412 Forest Hill Road near Holloway Auto Repair. She stood silent, long eyes on house number, feeling like seeing ghost of old year. Just 2 short houses, but enough to hide all truth, 40 years. Ava asked the elderly librarian working in the archives room. Do you remember a man named Granger who lived here? The old man frowned, thought for a moment, then said, sure. He worked for Mark's garage for a while. Those two were inseparable. If Mark worked days, Samuel stayed nights. People said they opened a Saturday night repair shop for regulars. Then one day Samuel vanished. Mark said he went to Alberta for work. No one asked more. As Ava left the building, dusk was falling, rain drizzling. She stood in the middle of Forest Hill Street. Now just a few old houses and a new auto shop built on the site of Holloway's old garage. In the dim light, she imagined two figures, one tall, one short, hauling something heavy into the workshop. On the drive back to Toronto, Ava called Inspector Grant. "We have a problem," she said. "Envelope DNA matches Holloway lineage, but not exactly Mark. Possible letter writer is Samuel Granger. Mark's cousin lived next to the garage in 1977. Old file notes he vanished in 1980 after suspected woman assault. I think they were both involved in Emily's disappearance." Grant was silent a few seconds, then asked, "You sure?" Ava replied, "Not 100%, but too many matches." Two men, same family, same neighborhood, both around the victim, and one vanished right after the case went cold. Grant sighed. "Find any other Holloway lineage still in Ontario? If Samuel has a son or grandson, get a comparison sample." As for Mark, he paused, then said quietly, "Be careful. If he knows you're digging up the past, he'll react." Ava looked out the window. Endless night outside. In the rearview mirror, streetlights receded like memories running backward. She whispered, almost a promise, "If Emily vanished by two hands, I'll find both." On the morning of the 18th of May, 2022, an Ontario court issued an emergency search warrant allowing the cold case unit to investigate the site of Mark Holloway's old garage in Orillia. It was the location listed on the 1977 business license under Holloway Auto Repair. After over 4 decades, the workshop had been sold to a new owner, a middle-aged mechanic named Carl Jensen, who only used the front for vehicle storage, leaving the rear foundation unchanged. Ava and the forensics team arrived early morning. Lake Coochie fog still hung thick, cloaking rusted metal roofs where old motor oil and rust smells blended into a strange, heavy, suffocating scent. The new owner, Jensen, paled seeing the police vehicles. "I've only rented this 6 years. If you need, I'll step out." Ava nodded. "Thanks, we just want to check the old workshop foundation. Won't affect your property." With yellow tape strung up, experts set up ground-penetrating radar, GPR, soil-penetrating radar to detect anomalies under concrete. 2 technicians slowly pushed the T-shaped probe across the oil-dusted floor. The screen showed steady wavy lines until one stopped calling out. "Anomaly here, about 40 cm deep dense material, not matching surrounding foundation." Ava stepped over, eyed the screen. A thick rectangular bright streak offset toward the wall corner near the old car lift spot. "How likely is that a void?" she asked. "Very high," the technician replied. "Looks like a patched concrete chamber, something buried below." They marked the spot, then began drilling. The drill screamed harshly, echoing in the enclosed space. Concrete chunks flaked off, revealing fine sand underneath. Less than 2 hours later, a small square cavity appeared, half a meter deep, less than a meter wide, enough to hide a few items. Damp mold and rust smells rose. Ava crouched, gloved hands gently brushing sand layers. First emerged a soft gray object, an old woolen scarf embroidered with pale blue initials. EC. She stopped breathing. Those letters, Emily Carter. The whole team froze. Ava lifted the scarf carefully, placing it in a clear evidence bag. "Seal the sample. Send to DNA lab immediately," she said. Voice hoarse. Beneath the scarf they found long hairs tangled in damp fabric. A specialist picked each, placing in test tubes. Under light, hairs gleamed reddish-brown, matching Emily's hair description in the file. Ava said nothing, just stared into the empty pit, eyes darkening. At the bottom, a different dark soil layer. A technician sampled. The soil isn't from the garage foundation. Fine sand mixed with organic mud and clay minerals like lakeside soil. Ava understood instantly. "Coochie Ching," she whispered. "He brought lakeshore dirt to fill the pit, faking the environment." The team went silent. A barrier wanting concealment often blends traces with another site, so if dug up, it seems imported from outside. Too sophisticated for an ordinary mechanic. Ava ordered full cavity photos, millimeter measurements, then all evidence sent to Ontario Forensic Institute. Scarf, hairs, soil, wood fragments with old paint from pit walls. Once sealed, Ava stood scanning the workshop. Old oil stains gleamed. Stale metal smells hit. In her mind rang George Randall's words. Holloway was the only one who knew the car location before police announced. If he knew where the car was, he knew how to hide evidence at his own workplace. 2 days later, preliminary lab report arrived. Ava opened the file, eyes scanning cold typed lines. Sample number 13 Amper's woolen scarf contains female DNA. Matches Emily Carter's genetic profile from victim's hair and toothbrush stored 1977. Sample has 3B hairs. Same DNA source as number 13 Amper's. Sample Hassan 3C soil matches mineral composition and mud particles characteristic of Lake Kusching area, 0. 3 miles from Carter vehicle discovery site. Ava read 3 times. Evidence no longer conjecture the scarf was victim's personal item. Clear DNA soil matching abandonment scene, meaning Emily Carter was at this garage or her items brought here by its 1977 operator. She called Inspector Grant. We have forensics confirmation. Emily's scarf, Emily's hair, and Kuching Lake soil in Mark Holloway's garage. Other end silent seconds. Then Grant replied, voice lowered. You realize what this means, Ava? That she never left Aurelia. Everything started and ended here. Grant sighed. Good. Keep this quiet. I'll get warrant for Holloway's preliminary detention and questioning. But no DNA results revealed until we find more physical evidence tying him directly to the act. Ava nodded. Eyes on desk photo. Emily Carter in 1976 classroom. Gentle smile. Hair tied over shoulder. She whispered, Emily, we're getting very close. That afternoon, Ava returned to the garage one last time. Late sun slanted through rusted iron doors, casting long blade-like shadows on floor. She stared at the taped-over pit. A stray cat crossed, sniffed, vanished through wall crack. Nothing moved. Only wind whistling through tin sheets like time's breath. She pulled phone, noted briefly. Holloway Auto Repair. Ground Zero. Concrete pit contains direct evidence. Next phase. Verify link between Mark Holloway and Samuel Granger. Determine who moved victim's items. Suspect, accomplices, or concealment of body. Leaving the workshop, Ava glanced back. Wall held faded wooden sign auto repair. Since 1972. Like a timestamp of deception. And in that brief moment, she felt Emily somewhere nearby, watching through dust layers, smiling faintly as if the girl knew her silence was finally broken. 3 days after finding the woolen scarf in the old garage, Ava got a call from the Simcoe County Magistrate's office. Search warrant for Samuel Graerz's old house approved. This house on south edge of Aurelia, sealed since 1982 after Samuel vanished without trace. Abandoned since changed hands few times, but original basement untouched. There, Ava believed, lay the rest of the mystery. Early morning, she and forensics team arrived at the house. A dark wood structure, gray shingled roof, moss-covered, ground floor windows boarded, air faintly moldy and oily. No one's lived here since 1980. One local officer said current owner won't renovate. Basement floor rotted. Ava replied, we just need to check below. Door opened. Dust-clouded flashlight beams. Wooden stairs creaked descending to basement. Damp walls, zigzag cracks, but far corner held something odd. A metal toolbox, thick dust-covered, lock rusted. Ava knelt, purried with knife. Lid popped open with dry clack. Inside, neatly packed old tools, wrenches, screwdrivers, mallet, old electrical cord coil. But what stopped Ava was the inner lid stuck with golden beige paint streak chips on edges. She signaled tech for sample. Under UV light, paint gleamed, matching Ford F-100 sample in file. Same color coverage. Ava noted quickly. Sample Quaderon pair paint match Mark Holloway's vehicle sample. Beneath tools she found small, yellowed. Envelope sealed with old tape outside, shaky handwriting. Don't forget what we did, team silent Ava. Opened inside Polaroid photo, blurry greenish tint, but hauntingly clear. A girl. In a car flash, straight on, terrified face eyes. Wide hands half raised, no need long look. Ava recognized Emily Carter. Air thickened. A tech whispered, God. Ava gripped table edge, examined closer. Right car window, reflected man holding camera. Tall, broad-shouldered baseball cap. She ordered digital zoom. Height, stance, shoulder ratio near perfect match to 1977. Mark Holloway physical description. We have 2 in the photo, Ava said slowly, words dropping like on cold concrete. Emily Carter and photographer likely Mark. Immediately, Polaroid sealed in airtight plastic. Ava requested transfer to Toronto Microforensics for fingerprints, fibers, contact DNA. While awaiting, she searched rest of basement. Walls held moldy paper scraps, scrolled numbers, and women's names, mostly 1972. Lakeside residence. One circled read, E. Carter, 10/23. Emily's disappearance date. Back in Toronto that evening, Ava sat alone in office staring at scanned photo on screen. Couldn't look away from Emily's expression. White eyes, fear and plea. Reflected figure seemed approaching in the photo amid flashburst truth captured just 45 years unseen. 3 days later, forensics report arrived, first line choke. Ava sample has 4B DNA on Polaroid Edge 99. 98%. Matched to Mark Holloway's sample compared to DNA from subject's pipe at residence she read twice hands. Clenched, no doubt Mark not just involved present directly when photo taken in Emily's car. More showed Emily alive in that moment before total vanishing. Ava reported to Inspector Grant immediately. We have victim photo in car. Holloway DNA on evidence paint matching his vehicle. Remaining question. Samuel Gers's role. Grant replied, voice horse. If Samuel kept the photo, he witnessed or held evidence for leverage. Either way, Holloway can't escape direct involvement now. Ava gazed through window, Toronto night. Quiet, rain-pattering roof. Thought of old garage, damp basement. 2 same name men living adjacent, 1977. One vanished, one stayed between them. Sole photo preserving vanished girl's face from Aurelia. She opened notebook, wrote final line. Second evidence establishes direct link from victim's car to perpetrator's hands. From here, no longer suspect. That evening, Ava printed photo placed on desk beside woolen scarf. 2 evidences, 2 worlds, 1 story. In photo, flash froze Emily's fear but illuminated face of manhole. Aurelia once trusted as kind mechanic, neighbor, helper. Ava whispered like oath. You left your own light in that photo, Mark. And that light will burn the last lie. Late March morning 2023. Fog blanketed Barrie thick as smoke. Police lights flickered in white haze reflecting on wet road. North Sundale Road neighborhood sealed off. OP task force and cold case investigators waited outside 118 Woodhouse. Mark Holloway's home, 20 years seemingly peaceful. White walls, low fence, blooming tulips. Ava stood behind command vehicle. Earpiece tight. Captain's voice steady on radio. Target confirmed inside. Living room light on. No others. She breathed deep, peered through foggy window. Mark's shadow moved, sitting in armchair by window as if expecting this. At 6:07 a.m. loudspeaker blared. Mark Holloway. This is Ontario Provincial Police. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges, kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and tampering with evidence. Step outside. Hands raised. No response. 5 seconds. 10:15 passed. Door silent. Ava gripped earpiece. Signaled approach team. 2 officers advanced. Pounded door inside, chair scrape. Then slow lock turn, door opened. Mark Holloway appeared in thick gray sweater. Silver hair, sunken eyes. His gaze odd, not fear, not surprise, just like one long awaited. You're earlier than I thought, he said quietly. Ava stepped up, presented warrant, voice clear. Mark Holloway. You're under arrest for direct involvement in Emily Carter's 1977 Aurelia disappearance. You have the right to remain silent and to an attorney. Mark eyed her moment, then faint smile chilling her spine. If she went far away, he said, why 45 years and no one seen? Words slow like cold blade. Ava replied low. Because you never let her go far. You just hit her where no one looked. Mark tilted head slightly, eyes challenging glint. You're smarter than the others, he said. But smart doesn't mean you understand everything. 2 officers advanced, cuffed him as led to car wind scattered fog. Neighbors who knew old mechanic slow yard walk stood silent. Woman whispered. I still saw him walking the dog every morning. Never thought it seen. Ava watched police car fade. That moment, no victory, just heavy emptiness. She knew evidence solid. DNA on photo, scarf, garage soil, vehicle paint. Testimonies of Mark's misdirection in old search, but new too. Something unfound. Emily at OP Barrie headquarters. Mark taken to interrogation room. Ava sat opposite. Polaroid photo centered on table. Yellow light beamed down, casting on his aged face. Recognize the person in the photo? She asked. Mark looked at the photo, eyes glancing over, then stopping at the reflection. I once had a Polaroid camera, he replied. Many people in town did. Taking photos isn't a crime. Ava placed another clear envelope on the table inside the woolen scarf embroidered EC. And this found in your garage with Couching Lake soil and Emily's hair. Mark squinted, cuffed hands on table, trembling slightly. I sold that garage over 40 years ago. Who knows what people left in it? We know, Ava replied, voice cold. Because DNA on the photo edge matches yours 99. 98%. No one else. You took it and you were the last to see her alive. Air in the room thickened. Mark bowed head, chuckled dryly. You know, he said, Sometimes people believe what they want to believe, and the truth sometimes there's no room left in memory. Ava stared straight into his eyes. The truth is still in the ground and the ground doesn't forget. He said no more, just looked up at the ceiling, eyes cloudy like one who'd seen something too big to hide. That afternoon, as the car carrying Mark left headquarters, arrest news spread across Ontario. Local TV stations reported OP arrest Mark Holloway, 78, in connection with 19707 disappearance of Emily Carter. Images of the house, yellow tape, and silver-haired old man head bowed being led away filled screens. In Orillia, former 1977 search participants went silent watching the broadcast. Harold Baines, who said, "Mark misdirected, then vanished midnight," sighed, "Turns out we walked with the one who made her vanish." And at the small Carter family home, now only Emily's cousin living there, the porch light stayed on all night like 40 years before. Ava watched the broadcast on small office screen, hands clenched tight. The arrest was just the first step. More interrogation, prosecution, trial ahead. But that night, for the first time in months, she saw Lake Couching in her mind, calmer, as if the water had stopped holding a secret. Second floor interrogation room at OP Barry blazed under fluorescent lights, cold gray painted walls, no windows. Ava sat opposite Mark Holloway on table 3, sealed clear plastic evidence bags. Phone 978 anonymous letter, woolen scarf, embroidered EC and Polaroid photo. Beside screen zoomed DNA report lines confirming sample matches, Mark Holloway DNA. Mark sat straight, hands clasped on table, wrists still marked from cuffs. He looked calm, almost contemptuous, eyes dull of one too used to suspicion but never charged. Ava didn't speak right away. She just sat watching, letting silence stretch. Wall clock ticked softly, each second like water drops in sealed room. Finally she said, "You know why we're here, Mark. 45 years ago, Emily Carter vanished. 3 days later, her car found. 4 years later, her father got typed letter saying, 'Don't look anymore.' We retested the letter DNA on envelope flap as yours and a close relative, Samuel Granger. How do you explain that?" Mark smirked, voice low. "Samuel helped me at the garage. If his DNA is on the letter, he wrote it. I know nothing about that stuff." Ava nodded slightly. "Then the woolen scarf found in your workshop concrete foundation has Emily's DNA and Couching Lake soil, where her car was abandoned." Mark shrugged. "I said it. I sold the shop in 1983. People in and out repairing. Who knows what they brought? Maybe someone misplaced, maybe him." Samuel. Ava opened briefcase, pulled printed photo of 2 men, Mark and Samuel, standing together before garage in 1976 opening ceremony. "You and Samuel were close, right? Relatives, co-workers, even partners. He vanished in 1980 right after suspected woman assault, and you lived quietly 40 years. Ever wonder if he's alive? What he'd say?" When Mark eyed the photo, eyes showing fatigue, Samuel was weak. Always scared. If anything happened, he did it, not me. Ava leaned forward. "You say he was weak. So why in the letter? Writer says we did it." Plural, Mark. "Not I. 2 people, 2 hands." Silence. Only air conditioner. Mark looked at floor, then spoke slowly. "I didn't write any letter." He could have. I just helped him clean up. When he left Orillia, I thought it was over. Ava, voice steady like reading indictment. "Then how do you explain your DNA on the Polaroid? The reflection in car window height, shoulder width, baseball cap all match you. You were there, Mark." For first time since arrest, Mark frowned, eyes twitching slightly. "What photo?" Ava didn't answer. She opened evidence bag, placed Polaroid on table. Photo, blurry green flash making Emily's face clear, fear frozen in frame. Mark stared, face losing fake calm. Slight tremor crossed his lips. "That photo doesn't exist anymore," he muttered. Ava looked up. "How do you know it once existed?" Mark realized he spoke too fast. He turned away. Clenched hands. "I just heard people say there was a photo. Rumor." "No, Mark," Ava said softly, voice cold as steel. "No one but you and Samuel knew there was a photo. This found in his basement. You just said doesn't exist anymore, meaning you believe it was destroyed. Only one who saw it would know that." Air in room thickened. Mark breathed fast, trying regain calm. "You're making it up. DNA could be contaminated. Photo could be faked," Ava replied. "Polaroid can't be faked. Internal film chemicals prove original shot 1977, and your DNA not contaminated. You know that." He went silent, eyes drifting elsewhere. Left hand tapped lightly on table, old mechanic habit when stressed. Ava watched closely, recalling in reflection photo. Man's hand-holding camera tapped same rhythm. You say Samuel weak. Ava continued, but I think opposite. He kept evidence, photo envelope, things you thought gone. Maybe he planned to expose you or just remind you. And when he vanished 1980, maybe you felt safe. Mark slammed table metallic clang sharp. You don't know anything, he shouted, then stopped, realizing exposed emotion. Room fell heavy silence. Ava didn't react, just stared straight. No, she said, voice lowering. I know very well. I know that girl trusted you. Brought car to your garage for repair. And I know you were last to see her alive. I know you were there. By Lake Couching, night of October 22nd. And I know this photo is moment you chose to remember and to forget. Mark leaned back in chair, sweat beading on forehead, crooked smile appeared, half bitter, half weary. What do you want to hear? That I killed her. That's Samuel and I together. He stopped, bit-lip turned away. Ava stood slowly, gathered files. Don't need you to say. We'll let evidence speak for you. As she stepped out, Mark raised head, hoarse voice echoing behind. You'll never find her, detective. She's in a place where water and ground don't talk to each other anymore. Ava paused at threshold, turned. But I still hear, she replied. And I'll make you hear with me. Door closed. In room, Mark bowed head, light reflecting in his eyes, gaze of one who just buried himself with words meant to deny. 2 weeks after interrogation, Ava haunted by Mark Holloway's final words. She's in a place where water and ground don't talk to each other anymore. That night she couldn't sleep. Not challenged like a clue, vague but deliberate. Ava sat with 1077 Aurelia map flipping areas around Lake Couchee. Noticed small west-southwest town spot, former industrial waste dump, where Holloway garage hauled metal scrap and old oil drums. Per city records area filled and closed 1,184. Now just gravel base and few abandoned warehouses. She reported to Inspector Grant requested second excavation. Warrant if he dumped evidence, this only. Places water and ground don't talk may mean may not. Natural ground, man-made fill where water can't. Seep Grant thought seconds, nodded. You have 48 hours, bring. GPR team and forensics cameras if anything. Bring it back morning of the 14th of April 2023. Forensics team set white tent and empty Aurelia. West lot former dump. Distant old factory smokestacks like scars on gray sky. Ava in reflective vest beside technician Julia Merrick. Ground-penetrating radar GPR powered on slid slowly over gravel. This time signal in under hour hollow metal object 1. 2M are deep size like old fuel drum. Julia eyed screen. This special not just trash deliberately buried item. Ava signal dig mechanical shovel plunged layers earth and gravel flying. Over hour later, gray metal top emerged as predicted. Industrial fuel drum 1 972 seconds garage type surface rusted but lid locked with screws. Tech Pride lid, accurate oil and corroded metal smell rushed out. Inside not chemicals but small plastic box wrapped tight in nylon and old tape. Ava gloved peeled layers light hitting. She saw shiny black coil. Super 8 film reel edges moldy but core intact. She held breath. He filmed something at OP Toronto Image Lab. Reel placed in restoration machine. Tech ran slow. Frames projecting blurry but recognizable narrow dirt road. Headlights through fog silver Toyota Corolla stopped forest edge room dead silent. Ava close to screen eyes glued each frame. At second 12 woman's shadow exiting car. Long hair, light sweater matching Emily Carter description. She stood mid-road looking around like waiting someone. Next frame, light spread. Beige Ford F100 appeared distant. Headlights off, silently approaching. Image fuzzy but clearly Mark's truck model. Ford stopped right behind Emily's. Tall man stepped down back view only. Broad shoulders, short hair, baseball cap. He circled the passenger door, said something to Emily. She stepped back, then boarded his truck. Then light went out. Next scene, different angle, oblique from distance. Ford driving slow along Couching Lakeside Road. Shot shaky like fixed mount camera. Not handheld. Ava frowned. Not top. This surveillance camera tech rewound reel start zoom screen bottom edge there. Faint white small text auto repair. Security camera 1. Timestamp C 1977 at PM room stunned Ava froze. Mark once said 1977. He installed cameras to watch customer cars nights, but no one thought surveillance tape survived. Turns out he buried his own camera reel which recorded the crime that night. No coincidence. Ava said voice. He buried it with garage waste, thinking rust and oil would mask film chemicals, but he forgot metal evidence doesn't degrade. In following hours, forensics analyzed each frame. Film timestamp matched exactly Emily reported missing night the 22nd of October 1977, around 10 p.m. Even moonlight on lake matched satellite weather records that night. When final frame appeared, Ava saw Ford stop lakeside. Lights on then off. Two shadows exiting, male, female, then just water rippling in wind. Footage ended there. Ava stood still, eyes closed. Didn't need continuation to know what happened. She knew exactly because 1978 letter said, "She's gone far away. Don't look anymore." Investigation report completed that night. Evidence number 17. Amper's Super 8 film reel extracted from Holloway garage surveillance camera content records. Victim Emily Carter exiting vehicle approaching. Mark Holloway's Ford F-100 night of the 22nd of October 1977. Verification original timestamp matches actual weather and moonlight data. Conclusion. Visual evidence confirms Mark Holloway's presence at disappearance scene. When Ava placed the Polaroid photo and film reel side by side, she realized two time slices. One moment Emily alive, second moment he took her. Two evidences from same hand differing by 45 years. She reported back to Grant. He listened pensive. In the end, he filmed his own crime. Just took half a lifetime to find the reel. Ava nodded, looking out window. Aurelia sky that afternoon, grayish distant Lake Coochie reflecting faint silver. Sometimes she said best crime hiders don't fear police, they fear their own memories, and memories always know how to come back. The 5th of November 2023, Ontario Superior Court in Barrie packed full. Over 45 years after Emily Carter disappearance, named Mark Holloway rang again amid lights and camera lenses. Outside press-crowded entrance, long line Aurelia residents stood silently along hallway. Many former classmates, neighbors, or colleagues of Emily. Front row. Detective An Nguyen sat among witnesses, thick file, clutched tight in hand, eyes straight to defendant's table. Mark Holloway, 78, appeared in dark suit, hair combed neat, face icy. He looked little different from old file photo except eyes no longer innocent. Crown Attorney Daniel Keating stood opening. Your Honor, we're here today not just to try a man, but to answer question haunting Ontario community 46 years. What happened to Emily Carter night of the 22nd of October 1977? Answer finally in evidence, science, and time-preserved DNA, film, photo, and letter. Keating presented each evidence, large screen behind projected woolen scarf embroidered. EC Polaroid photo Super 8 film, 1978 envelope. Each numbered shown to jury, scarf found under defendant's garage concrete. Keating said DNA test confirms Emily Carter epithelial cells and hair fibers. Same source, same location. Forensics found soil with Couchaching Lake mineral signature where Emily's car found, meaning victim's belongings brought to Holloway's garage after she vanished. He paused. Beat pointed next screen Polaroid photo. In photo you see girl in Toyota Corolla flash straight on panicked face, window reflects man holding camera. Ontario Forensic Institute report confirms DNA from photo edge 99. 98% match to defendant below. Ava clenched hands. She'd seen photo hundreds times, but each public showing Emily's face still tightened her chest. Keating continued, voice deep firm. And finally, Your Honor, Super 8 film, evidence number 17 Amper's. Timeline matches the 22nd of October 1977, 10:16 p.m. Images show victim exiting car approaching BA Ford 500. Defendant's vehicle. First frame clearly prints Holloway Auto Repair. Security camera 1. Defendant installed this camera in shop and he buried reel at industrial waste dump. If not intent to conceal what is. Murmurs rippled through courtroom. Defense attorney Michael Trent, graying hair, calm demeanor, stood rebutting. Your Honor, I don't deny tragic disappearance of Miss Carter, but I object to prosecution building complete story from imperfect evidence fragments. DNA collected after nearly half-century. Who guarantees no contamination? Soil sample, hair fibers, all could be planted, and film one analog device easily altered. Can it be absolute evidence? We can't convict 78-year-old man just because modern tech thinks smarter than time. Keating replied immediately. No notes. Tech doesn't think. It records. And time only hides, doesn't erase truth. He called Dr. Sarah Fraser, DNA expert at Ontario Forensic Institute, to testify. She stepped to stand, hair tied high, data board in hand. Dr. Fraser, Keating asked, explained to court how we confirmed DNA sample uncontaminated or unplanted. Fraser nodded, voice firm. We analyzed DNA from scarf and Polaroid using next-generation sequencing. Under electron microscope, we observed protein structure around DNA characteristic of aged samples. since proteins degrade slower than DNA but retain period features. In other words, this protein sequence only possible in 1,272 samples can't recreate by adding new DNA. If planted, proteins would mismatch, but here structure intact, samples completely original, Trent interjected. But could come from someone else, not defendant. Fraser smiled faintly. We compared over 2 million gene markers. Random match probability 1 in 8-7 billion, unless defendant has unknown identical twin. Light laughter spread from back rows. Trent frowned, silent. Keating moved to film. He played 22-second clip. Blurry green. Toyota stopped lakeside, then forward approaching as lights hit frame. Ava felt room air still. Entire jury leaned forward holding breath. Your Honor, Keating said. Film timeline matches exactly Emily Carter reported missing. Car window reflection confirms defendant present at scene. He filmed his own crime. Trent stood trying salvage. This footage could be planted by another. Defendant employed relative Samuel Granger at garage. He vanished 1,980 violent history. Possibly Granger committed act and framed defendant. Your Honor, reasonable alternative prosecution can't exclude. Keating signaled Ava. She stepped up holding genealogy file. Genealogical DNA analysis shows second sample from 1,978 envelope. Indeed, Samuel Granger relative to Mark Holloway. But that letter not just confession but warning, sent when Mark knew police suspecting him. 2 men, one vanished, one stayed. But only Stayer had time to bury burn rewrite story. She placed Polaroid on stand voice low. If Samuel perpetrator Mark Holloway wouldn't tremble seeing this photo and say that photo doesn't exist anymore. Innocent don't remember what they never saw. As Ava left stand, courtroom fell silent. Mark Holloway sat motionless, eyes fixed on scarf in evidence bag. Light reflected on his face, deepening wrinkles. Keating closed presentation. She was lost but never gone. All remains hair fiber soil spec lens light say same. He was there. And when science finds truth's voice, liar finally quiets. Closing words rang through courtroom heavy as unspoken verdict. Court recessed but no one left seats. Room frozen in silence. Half-century silence now beginning to break. 3 months after first hearing, Crown versus Holloway returned to court. This time, room twice as crowded. Rumors flying. Prosecution unveiling new witness sold person lived with Mark Holloway when Emily Carter vanished. Press swarm steps. Police barricades lined gate in pale Ontario winter sun. Detective On Wynn stood in hallway silently watching crowd. She knew today's story 46 years closed not by gunshot or full confession, but remaining truth in shadows. Courtroom doors opened. Crown Attorney Daniel Keating entered first behind silver-haired woman. Small stature, weary but steely eyes. He introduced, voice resounding. Your Honor, new witness Margaret Holloway, defendant's ex-wife. She agreed testify. After nearly half a century silence, room gasped. Mark raised head, eyes widening briefly, then closing fast like seeing ghost. Margaret stepped to stand, hands trembling slightly. Keating gave water glass, then asked, Mrs. Holloway, confirm. Gente 97. You lived with defendant in Aurelia, correct? Yes, she replied, voice raspy. We married 1974. He opened garage. I taught music at elementary near lake. And recall anything about night the 22nd of October, 1977. Margaret looked down, then up, eyes straight to Mark. I remember he came home late past 11. I awake, worried coat, muddied handheld heavy wet canvas bag. I asked where, he said cleaning garage. When I touched bag heavy inside something hard like metal or stone I tried open, he snatched back, said, never touch. Murmurs rose in courtroom. Keating stepped closer. Did you see that bag again? No. Next morning he took it to truck and left. When returned, bag gone. Few days later, heard girl missing. Defense attorney Michael Trent jumped up. Objection. Witness recounts 4-6-year-old memory. No physical evidence. Keating replied, we have evidence, Your Honor. He signaled. Ava stepped up, carrying clear evidence bag with small dark beige frayed rotten fabric scrap. This fiber sample found in fuel drum, defendant buried. She presented fiber analysis shows. Origin industrial canvas bag type produced only 3. Ontario Factos 1,970 seconds, and notably this fabric sample clings pale blue wool fiber matching victim's EC embroidered scarf. Ava handed document to Dr. Fraser. Expert confirmed wool fiber on fabric, same dye type, same oxidation process, same production time. We conclude. Canvas bag and scarf direct contact. Same cold damp environment, possibly Kuching lakeside soil. Below, Mark shook head slightly, lips pursed, eyes drifting. Margaret looked at him, said softly, "I waited for you to tell truth." 46 years. Mark during 15-minute recess. Courtroom dead silent. Ava stood in hallway gazing, thin snow falling through window. In her mind, final pieces locked. Canvas bag scarf, lakeside soil, and Ford F-100. All traced tonight, the 22nd of October, 1977. That afternoon, as hearing resumed, Mark unexpectedly requested testify. Silence enveloped room as he stood. Figure trembling but gaze different, not defiant but weary, like one exhausted by own past. Before the jury, Mark spoke slowly. "I didn't kill her. I swear I just helped Samuel. That night he drove to the garage, panicked. He said the girl fell, head hit the car door, blood flowing. He feared charges, so asked me to help clean up. I believed him. I thought it was just an accident." Keating stood, voice cold. "And you helped by taking wet cold bag out of town, burying it with film reel recording you appearing beside her car. I didn't know the film still existed. I just thought if I made a few things disappear, he'd leave my life forever." Ava sat below, eyes darkening. An innocent doesn't bury another's crime, she thought silently. Keating posed final question. "You say Samuel did it all, but 1,978 letters says we did it. Why we not him?" Mark looked down, silent, very long. Then he said softly, almost whisper, because he was right. "I was there. I didn't stop him. And when she fell, I didn't catch." Words silenced entire room. Keating paused, then closed file. No further questions. 2 days later, jury returned with verdict. Aurelia sky that day. Thick gray, light snow falling outside window. Ava, Margaret, and few Old Town residents sat waiting when judge read verdict. Voice slow but firm. Defendant Mark Holloway court finds guilty on charges of kidnapping and obstruction of justice for intentionally concealing, destroying evidence, and staging false scene. However, due to no victim body and evidence insufficient to prove act depriving life, court lacks basis to convict on homicide. Defendant sentenced to 35 years imprisonment without parole to be served at Kingston Penitentiary. Room dead silent. No one cheered. No one clapped. Not victory, just partial truth restored. Margaret bowed, head crying. Ava clenched file, chest feeling both relief and bitterness. As Mark led away, he turned. "Look straight at Ava. You'll never find her," he said again, but voice weaker. No longer confident, as if he himself didn't know where Emily was. Ava watched, replied softly, "No need. She's been found in truth. You just didn't dare deny." Courtroom door closed. Outside, snow-covered steps, afternoon light falling like white veil. Ava stepped out. Head up to cold sky by Lake Cushing. Wind still blew, water still lapped steady. Perhaps finally ground and water began talking to each other in language of justice. The 7th of March 2024, snow melted slowly on Barry Courthouse roof. In final sentencing of Regina versus Holloway, Judge Eleanor Shaw read sentence in deep, clear, emotionless voice. Defendant Mark Holloway, born 1/1945, found guilty on charges of kidnapping and obstruction of justice. Considering age, health status, and case duration, court imposes 12-year prison sentence at Federal Kingston Penitentiary. Though evidence insufficient for homicide prosecution, defendant's actions directly caused permanent disappearance of Emily Carter and perverted justice process for nearly half-century. When judge paused, courtroom silent, no clapping, no sighs of relief. Everyone just looked at Mark's silver hair, thin shoulders, gaunt face of old man imprisoned too long in own guilt. He said no final words. As police led away, he just turned head to window where morning light slid through, cold and distant. Back rows Ava knew and stood. No joy, no pride, just sad relief. Finally, Emily Carter case closed on paper, but in her heart only like door cracked open behind still shadows of unanswered questions. 1 month later, Carter case 19/2023 forensic summary report published. 180-page document titled Case File 447WO. Carter Investigation Final Review. Opening first line bold print advancement of forensic genetic genealogy. DNA technology key factor solving case report listed event chain. 1978 letter containing DNA of 2 people, Emily Carter and Mark Holloway, leading to reopening file DNA sample. Compared to genealogical database first connecting Holloway and Granger lineages. 2022 excavation at old garage identified direct evidence, woolen scarf, victim hair, and Cushing Lake soil. Super 8 film reel buried in fuel drum became first visual evidence proving defendant presence at scene. Polaroid photo preserving DNA and reflection factor, directly confirming physical link between victim and perpetrator report, concluded without genealogical DNA technology. This case would remain forever in cold files. Combination of genetic data, image reconstruction, and environmental analysis brought Emily Carter back to justice at document end. Separate note from lead investigator Inspector Grant moved Ava reading justice. Not measured by time, measured by those who don't give up. June 2024. Ava invited to Cold Case Canada Conference in Ottawa Annual Forum for Cold Case Units nationwide in large auditorium of Ontario Forensic Centre. She stepped a podium amid hundreds investigators, forensics experts, and criminology students. Behind screen showed title Reconstructing 1977 The Carter Case and the DNA That Spoke. She began slowly, no notes. Assigned this case early 2022. Then file only envelope, typed letter and note. No evidence, no motive. 2 years later we had photo, film, real DNA sample and sentence that, not just from technology, but persistence of dozens believing no story truly ends until told to its end. On screen she showed image of Emily Carter, young teacher smiling in 1976 classroom, soft light through window, entire hall silent. 46 years that gap between two investigator generations, but genealogical DNA technology erased that gap. We didn't find body, but found truth, and sometimes injustice like science. Truth is only remaining form of the lost. She paused, beat lights. On calm face but deep eyes, then said line later quoted in dozens. Canadian forensics articles and speeches evidence doesn't disappear, it just waits for someone who knows how to read it. Entire halls stood. No cheers, just long, deep, steady applause like shared heartbeat of those buried in old files listening to truth's echo. After speech, reporter asked Ava, "Do you think Mark Holloway ever told full truth?" She replied simply, voice light but firm, "I think he did, just in language of guilt. And sometimes DNA is the translator." That evening, Ava returned to Toronto office. On desk, Emily Carter, file closed. Cover stamped red, case closed, 2024. She placed beside small photo of Emily and old notepaper. She didn't leave. Line Lieutenant Beck wrote 45 years ago. She turned off light, leaving only window glow on yellowed file. In dim light, Ava felt someone smiling. Not in photo, but in quiet space where past and present finally touched. April 2024, Aurelia shed last snow layer. Lake Couchiking no longer frozen but turned silver green, reflecting clear spring sky. North Shore, Ontario forensics team set white tents. After Holloway sentence, per Ava's proposal, they decided final search more symbolic effort than expectation. Sonar scanned lake bottom in strips, gliding through thick mud under murky water, rotted wood pieces, rusted iron, and 46-year buried memories. Diver reported via radio. Anomalous object, bone or animal horn, deep mud layer. Team held breath when object surfaced small enough to fit palm. Human bone fragment, smooth faded but structure intact. Sample rushed to Ontario Forensic Institute week later. Ava got call from Dr. Frazier. Voice trembled slightly. Not emotion, but knowing just placed period on long chapter.
Canadian investigation history analysis complete.
DNA perfect match to Emily Carter profile, no doubt. We found her. Ava stood, silent by window outside Toronto, still noisy, but that moment heard only wind, small bone fragment, just body part but all. Missing evidence to close 46 years waiting. Not technology, not luck. But lake itself returned truth. Late May morning, Ava returned to Aurelia. Lakeside water rippled, reflecting brilliant dawn. Far shore, residents erected small stone memorial engraved. Emily Carter 1953-1977. She didn't leave, she was found. Wind carried water and young pine sand brushing Ava's face. She stood silent, gazing lake, where sunlight dissolved in thin mist. In mind rang Grant's closing words. Justice not measured by time. But now Ava understood more. Justice doesn't end its sentence. Ends when forgotten, called by name again. She bent, placed white tulip on memorial. Image of Emily, an old photo, returned radiant smile, clear gaze, everything closed. Not by judge's gavel, but by water. Gently lapping shore, steady forgiving. Ava turned away, early sun covering path back to town. On lake surface, ice fully melted, revealing glass clear water somewhere deep below past. Fragments resting peacefully and on surface. Dawn light, shining light. Aurelia hadn't seen nearly half-century narrators. Deep soft voice rose like lake's own epilogue. After 46 years, the lake returned the truth. No one disappears forever in silence. The story Ontario 1977 resonates with present-day U.S. in reminding us justice doesn't come automatically. It revived by observant communities, listening authorities, and properly funded science. From EC. Embroidered wool scarf buried under concrete to Super 8 film reel. Timestamp the 22nd of October 1977. And Polaroid photo imprinting photographer's shadow. Every detail shows what saved case, not lucky break, but archival discipline and persistent review. Practical lessons for Americans today. 1. Preserve and digitize family records, photos, diaries, personal items. Because like in Emily's case, small objects, scarf, hair fiber can become key decades later. 2. When loved one missing, don't assume they left voluntarily. Demand official report. Log specific timelines. Retain letters divided by envelopes like 1978 anonymous letter for future DNA testing. 3. Communities beware overly enthusiastic search leaders. Mark Holloway misdirected then vanished midnight in U.S. Missing persons volunteer groups should have verification protocols. Scene logs, clear role divisions. 4. Support forensics funding. Genealogical DNA technology unlocked case. Locally advocate state divided by city budgets for retesting old evidence. Deploying GPR at suspect sites like dumps divided by garages. 5. For investigators re-enter old witnesses with fresh mindset. Ava revisited same facts but asked different questions, and that made difference. Ultimately, story's ethic is persistence. Evidence doesn't disappear, only waits for someone who knows how to read it. In U.S. today means document thoroughly preserved data. Share info responsibly and believe truth may be slow but never silent forever. If you believe no one truly disappears while truth still saw it, subscribe to channel to join us continuing journey, exploring cold cases across North America. Thank you for following Emily Carter's story. See you next episode where another lake may whisper long-buried secrets.